It is dessert time, my absolute favorite, and today I am making a very unique cake. 8 thin chocolate layers with vanilla custard frosting and chocolate ganache on top. It is absolutely delicious and unlike anything you probably ever had. So let's get to it. We're gonna start on the frosting first. It needs to cook over a water bath and then cool down to room temperature. And then while it's cooling, we'll work on the cake layers. So we're gonna grab a small pot. I filled it up with about 1/3 with water. And while that's heating up on the stove over there, we're gonna mix the frosting together. So for our ingredients that will go into this bowl and on the water bath, I have sour cream, sugar, eggs, cornstarch, and a little bit of vanilla. I'll mix all that together, set that on top of our boiling pot, and start cooking that frosting. So we're gonna put 3/4 cup of sugar in this bowl. Break a couple of eggs in there. We're gonna whisk that really good. Make sure it's combined. And now we're adding 2 cups of sour cream. And then 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Whisk all of that together. I'll put 2 teaspoons of vanilla in here. And let's make sure that our water is boiling so we can set it right on top of the pot. So now that our water came to a rolling boil, I'm gonna set my bowl right on top and lower the heat to medium. And I'm just gonna leave this here, occasionally stirring, and let the frosting cook. So the frosting thins down a little bit at first when it's heated up, but then it'll thicken up. You just need to continue cooking it until it's thick and pudding-like. So now the frosting has thickened to about kind of like a pudding. So this is where we want it to be. So now we're gonna take it off and let it cool down. And then I'm just gonna cover it. And let it cool to room temperature. Now that our frosting is cooling, we're going to start on our cake layers. So what I'm gonna do is mix sugar, eggs, some melted butter, honey, and baking soda. I'll whisk that all up in my bowl and then also set that on top of the same pot to cook over steam. And we're gonna cook it over steam for about 5 to 7 minutes until everything is dissolved. So this is ready, everything's dissolved and it's kind of foamy. So that's all good to go. Okay, so now we're gonna add the dry ingredients in here. I have a teaspoon of baking powder and I'm just adding them while whisking. I'm gonna add about a 1/4 cup of baking cocoa powder. About 2.5 cups of flour here that I'm going to add a little at a time and mix. Okay. All right, so I'm going to switch to a spoon because it's going to get pretty thick here. And then now I'm just gonna dump it right on the table and mix it by hand. If additional flour is needed to kind of keep it from sticking to the table, go ahead and add just a little bit and just bring it all together and knead the dough until it kind of resembles Play-Doh and does not stick to your fingers. As you can see, it doesn't stick to my hands, but it's still very soft. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of roll it out a little bit and divide it into 8 to 10 equal portions that I'm going to later roll out. Roll it into a ball, place them all on the plate, and then we're going to cover them so that they don't dry out. And then roll each one out between 2 parchment sheets of paper and bake them. To roll them out. All right, so I have 2 parchment sheets here. I'm gonna flatten one of these out, cover it with another one, and just kind of lightly roll them out. off for a somewhat of a mess-free situation. And then I'm gonna poke it with a fork so that it kind of all stays down and it doesn't rise up or puff up too much. These do bake really quickly. I have my oven preheated at 375. Goes on the baking sheet and into the oven. So while that one's baking, I'm gonna start rolling the other one. All right, now that the cake layer is baked, as soon as it comes out of the oven, I want to make sure that I cut around it and make a perfect circle. So I'm just going to use one of these. And then I'm gonna save all of these pieces that I'm gonna later crush up and use for decorating the cake. So our custard is now cooled down to room temperature. I have 1 stick of butter here that's also softened at room temperature. So what I'm gonna do is whip the butter and then add the custard into it, whip it all together and make a nice fluffy frosting for the cake layers. But there's also a secret ingredient that I'm adding in there and you will see what that is really soon. All right. Custard, probably in 4 separate portions. And I'm mixing well after each addition. Scrape the rest of it in there. Scrape all the sides. Okay, so now it's mixed in really well. So what I do is I add about a tablespoon of cognac. You can add rum as well, usually just for about a tablespoon, maybe 2, just for flavor. I'm not an alcoholic, I promise. And that's that. The cognac gives it a nice, kind of like an aromatic flavor and smell to it. Once it's all put together with the chocolate cake layers, that combination is going to be delicious. Okay, so now I'm going to take all of these little bits and pieces that we have left over from trimming our cake layers and put in a little baggie, crumble them up, and then I'll use them later when I decorate the cake. So they're nice and dry now. They've been sitting on the counter and just kind of drying while the rest of the cake layers are baking. So they should crumble up pretty quickly. It's also a great opportunity to just kind of, I don't know, stress release, think of anything that's bothering you, just go. You know? Just a little tip. Free therapy. You can also just throw this in a food processor and do that quicker than what this is, but I kind of like this process. All right, so I have my crumbs. I'm gonna set them aside, and now we're gonna assemble the cake layers. All right, so I'm just gonna put a little dollop of cream in the middle to put my first layer on, just so that it prevents it from slipping back and forth when I assemble the rest of them. So here we go, this is the fun part. Something here. So now I'm just going to use the last bit of the frosting to go around the edges. It doesn't need to be perfect because that's where the crumbs are going to go. So now I'm gonna make the chocolate ganache. I have 2 tablespoons of semi-sweet chocolate chips here and 2 tablespoons of heavy cream. I warmed up the heavy cream in the microwave for about 30 seconds so it's nice and hot. I'm just gonna pour it over the chocolate and let it sit and kind of melt a little bit. And while that's melting, I'm gonna start putting the crumbs on the sides of the cake. I'm just gonna just slightly covering the sides a little bit. It's gonna have a little bit of a rustic look to it. Put chocolate on top. rest of it off on the paper towel so that all the excess, and use it for later, for another cake. All right. So as a little girl, when my mom used to teach me how to cook, one of the things that she was very particular about is that the dishes where the food sits are clean. So if she saw this over here right now, she'd make me take a piece of paper towel and clean it, because God forbid, it doesn't look perfect. So Mom, if you're watching, see, I'm cleaning. All right, somewhat better. All right, so now we're just gonna mix our chocolate, ganache until it's nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. All right, the best part. Spread that out. I call just about every one of my desserts rustic, only because rustic allows for imperfections, I feel like. And now we refrigerate it overnight, preferably. You could probably cut into it after 3 hours in the refrigerator, but I recommend refrigerating it overnight so that all the flavors combine and it's delicious. Can't wait to dig in. Well, that's a wrap. If you enjoyed making that cake with me, definitely click like, share with your friends, subscribe, and if you want to be notified about our new videos, click the little bell for notifications. We'll see you next time.